for the BJP, this is quite a large sort of prestige win.
The BJP was able to convince the people that if you have what they call a double engine government, you will be able to solve these tricky policy issues.
Congress played a little bit of a spoil sport for Aam Aadmi Party. The average vote share for BJP was somewhere around 45%, and for Aam Aadmi Party it was around 43%, and Congress was around 6%. Hi, welcome to episode 37 of the India Dialogue. We're happy you're listening to us. My name is Ruchir. I'm joined by my co-hosts Manu and Mitali. It's been a little while since our last episode, mainly because we've decided that we want to cover topics that we are interested in. And so some of the frequency of our episodes might reduce as we do the podcast moving forward. Thank you for still subscribing to us and listening to us. We're grateful for you engaging and especially providing us with feedback. In case you don't know who we are, Manu is a lawyer and an advocate with his own law practice. He's also a spokesperson for DMK. Mitali, known for her time at CNBC, is an acting director at the Reuters Institute at Oxford. She's also written a book called Crypto Crimes. My name is Ruchir. I'm the CEO at Distributed Energy and chair at the School of Policy and Governance. Today, we're just going to cover the most recently held New Delhi Assembly elections. Mitali, why don't you introduce the topic?
Yeah, thanks, Richard. And it's good to sort of have the three of us back. And I know you spoke about how we're trying to address topics where there's something we think that the three of us have value to add, and the elections may seem like, an obvious pick. But I think Delhi is important in many ways, not just because it is the national capital, but I think also because of the model of governance that we're looking to explore. So for those that haven't caught up on the Delhi elections that happened last week, there was a big change of guard. It's a 70-member Delhi Assembly, and the BJP has come back to power after nearly 27 years, I think. So it's been a long gap for them. It was a very clean and clear victory for them. They got about 48 seats. The Aam Aadmi Party also managed to get about 22 seats, I think. And the other part of the story is the Congress that actually came up with naught this time round in the Delhi elections. Some of it could be because of friction that was building between some of these India bloc parties, but that's probably, sort of post-mortem analysis. Some interesting takeaways from there were the fact that former Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal actually lost his seat. The sitting Chief Minister at that point, Atishi, managed to win her seat. The Deputy Chief Minister, Manish Sisodia, also lost his seat. And I think for the BJP, this is quite a large sort of prestige win. It is a national capital region, of course. It is a state that they haven't been able to establish control or rule over for many years now, and now they are in that position. And it is being billed as the double engine sarkar or double engine government. But it's important, I think, to just sort of unpack what's going on there, what this means at a national level. And I think the intersections that we bring to it, which is what is the political legal aspect, what is the socio-economic aspect, what does this mean for the business landscape and the entrepreneurial landscape. Manu, maybe I'll hand over to you with the first salvo, which is sort of context setting on why the Delhi elections are important and why this win could be seen as important from, a national perspective.
I don't think there's any win that would be regarded as more important. We've recently tried to talk through elections that took place in Haryana, then Maharashtra, and now we are in Delhi. And as we spoke on those episodes on those two elections, almost there was a sense of little bit of disbelief that Bharatiya Janata Party, given that they had not achieved what they set out to in the 2024 Lok Sabha elections, was still able to pull state elections, right? And Haryana, it seemed like they were the underdogs and they managed to win. Maharashtra, it was a uh, difficult to predict election. I think people were sort of split, but perhaps Bharatiya Janata Party did have an edge, but no one could have possibly predicted the kind of thumping majority that they're able to pull in Maharashtra. But then I remember even back then, uh, I felt very differently about Delhi because it was a state that it was not a straight up BJP led and Congress led alliance fight, which was in Maharashtra and Haryana. Here you had a two-time sitting chief minister in Arvind Kejriwal and the Aam Aadmi Party, who have been a very, very strong force in Delhi politics over the last, you know, 10 plus years since the India Against Corruption movement, which spawned many of the Aam Aadmi Party leaders and its early politics, right? But having said all of that, I think I must sort of, go back to one of our episodes where when we were discussing, in the lead up, as we were sort of projecting in the future what might happen in Delhi, we did talk a lot about the sort of the political ED-led arrest and prosecution of Kejriwal and the Aam Aadmi Party, including Manish Sisodia, Satyendra Jain. We did also discuss, if you remember, that Aam Aadmi Party had called, if they would call for an early election, and also Arvind Kejriwal, in spite of coming back out on bail, he chose to not become chief minister, and instead, some people would say he sort of, had a placeholder in the form of Atishi as chief minister and so on. But having seen through that process, I think it is still quite difficult for me to believe that BJP ended up getting 48 seats. I don't think any of us underestimate the BJP and its sort of election machine, or how they go about election campaign work. But then 48 out of 70 is still a pretty solid victory. As the old adage goes, which I love repeating, opposition seldom win, governments must lose. And I think, again, every single time you must look at a government and see what it is that they have done, why it is that they've not were able to retain the kind of popular support that they did, say, 4 or 5 years ago, right? Before I want to go into what this will mean for the country, what this would mean for other states, but also what this would mean for Delhi. But perhaps, a starting point should be, what were the key election related issues that we saw, um, I guess, converging on this political election over the last 1 year or so? Because I don't think BJP or Prime Minister Modi, or anyone in the BJP think tank was even waiting for election to be notified by the Election Commission of India. The campaign began much, much earlier than that. I think that is a win for Aam Aadmi Party, because I think they made BJP work on this much longer than potentially any other state. As you rightly said, Mitali, I think this is a prestige election because it is a prestigious state. It is also, right where Mr. Modi and Mr. Shah and Mr. Nadda live, right? And it should feel a bit odd that they've been this towering political force, across the country for 11 years now, but still, the place where they live, they haven't been able to sort of win that election. Having said that, like I said, I think this started a long, long, long time ago, the entire election campaign. The way I see it, three sort of election issues played out. One is around corruption. So the excise policy case, what has come to be known as around various sort of cases that were filed by the CBI and the ED, the prosecution, the arrests, the entire sort of fight in courts to sort of keep people like Manish Sisodia, Arvind Kejriwal, and others behind bars, being one part of it, but the other part also, this party which came which was born out of the India Against Corruption movement in 2013, 2012, 2013, definitely 2013, I think was made to explain on corruption charges, right? So, sort of bringing it back home and making them talk the anti-corruption or talk the corruption language, I think is something that BJP was able to do and was able to do successfully. Of course, they tied that in with allegations around how Mr. Kejriwal himself had done up, spent a lot of money doing up his official residence. They've called it Sheesh Mahal and so on and so forth. And so that being one part of it. Of course, there's always, emotional issues that need to be also, center focused in elections, right? And I think there was an emotional issue around how one of the senior Aam Aadmi Party leaders, Swati Maliwal, was treated. She left the party in a huff, but not before making extremely serious allegations, which threatening safety of women, safety of a person in the Aam Aadmi Party itself, someone who was very high up even in terms of government position. When she went to meet the chief minister, how she was treated, which also took along with that entire issue. Members of Kejriwal's personal staff were arrested and so on. So again, the issue of safety, issue of women's safety, issue of how women are being treated as such, I think also became a part of a part of political election discourse around that time, which possibly worked against the Aam Aadmi Party. And finally, the long-standing issue of pollution, right, which Delhi has been facing for many years now. I think there was a lot of discussion, though this is a hardcore policy issue and nobody's really yet figured out a solution as far as I can tell. But nevertheless, I think the BJP was able to convince the people that if you have what they call a double engine government, right, like one in the union, one in the state, which are in sync, which are in tandem, which work, in complete sort of uh, synchronicity, then you will be able to solve these sort of tricky policy issues. And I think that perhaps also played a part. But I thought this is how the election, according to me, played out. I thought the BJP was very smart in picking holes in the core Aam Aadmi Party strength area, which is corruption or anti-corruption and good governance. I think they were able to use the Swati Maliwal incident to create a campaign around women's safety and how Aam Aadmi Party treated its own cadre members, leaders, and of course, I think pollution too. But beyond that, I mean, are there any other issues that we should be thinking about?
I want to say three things. One on the women's safety thing. There's a very strong parallel in UP. Talking to the voters in UP, one of the things that comes across is the difference, for example, parents feel about letting their daughters be on the street at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. and how much safer it has become since the current BJP government has been in power. So there is resonance around this idea that BJP is better for women, and Delhi obviously has a really bad reputation on women's safety. Two things I want to talk about. One is I think just on the air pollution piece, it's not just that the double engine government from BJP may give strength and help address this issue. It's also that Arvind Kejriwal and AAP had built a reputation of being always the victim, and that they could not. They would always complain about other state governments. Obviously the Yamuna pollution issues. Every time there were safety or security issues, they would blame the central government. We constantly saw, and I don't think we see this as much in other states as we saw in the Aam Aadmi government, about how they were always the victim. The last thing I want to talk about is the. I found that in some ways, if you look at the voting share and how it splits, Congress played a little bit of a spoil sport for Aam Aadmi Party too, which is that Congress increased its vote share just slightly, which took away obviously from Aam Aadmi Party. And the difference is, if you look at the average vote share differences, it wasn't as big. So I believe the average vote share difference, obviously it doesn't play like this seat by seat, but the average vote share for BJP was somewhere around 45%, and for Aam Aadmi Party it was around 43%, and Congress was around 6%. So even minute differences in our case can have a really big impact, and obviously there's been a big vote share drop for Aam Aadmi Party, but the in many ways Congress without winning may have upset the election a little bit for Aam Aadmi Party. Mitali?
Yeah, no, I think, all great points from both of you. And I suppose I want to pick up on the point that Manu made about, governments lose and oppositions win. Um, if you were to track back even the last 3 or 4 years, and for a number of reasons, as Manu pointed out, this excise duty scam, seeing a lot of very senior ministers being jailed for long periods of time. Um, I think the Aam Aadmi Party, to put it very bluntly, just lost the plot. I think in the last couple of years, they completely lost the plot in terms of what the mandate was. I mean, if you think about what the mandate was when they came to power, it was two things very simply. It was improving the level of education, particularly at the primary level. It was improving the level of healthcare access, particularly at the primary level. Did they do great things there or good things there? Absolutely, yes. I think the amount of work that went in the early years in both improving primary school facilities, bringing in happiness in the curriculum, the mohalla clinics, which really brought a lot of primary healthcare very close to people where they needed it, were fantastic ideas. That's two things. And the other was that there was very much this groundswell of public support. That's how AAP was built, right, on this volunteer model, which was sort of supposed to be an alternative to existing traditional political parties, saying, let's get people involved and let's get, active citizenry involved in the process. And I think they just lost the plot. They completely it just went so far away from public consciousness, these two or three elements for which they had come into power. Even the last time, if you remember, there were these sweeping offers made of electricity rates being completely removed for people from a particular socio-economic side. And again, it was a very social welfare model that, AAP had premised their growth on. And I think for a number of reasons. One, the scam and the impact it had on basic running of the government. And the other, honestly, and let's be clear about it, is also sort of money and muscle, right? Is up against a really massive machinery in terms of funds and finances and resources. And I think they found themselves quite strapped towards the end, while trying to remain relevant, while also trying to see their ambitions growing, which is why they're in power in Punjab. So I think there was that ambition to do more. There was a point when they won Punjab where it felt like this is now the sort of party of consequence. This is the opposition that the BJP has to fight. It's not the Congress anymore. So I think a lot of soul searching is going to have to be done. I also think this is now time to walk the talk. For all these years that BJP has said we can't do this or that because we don't have power in Delhi, this is now the moment. I would not be surprised if these conversations around pollution now turn to, well, AAP is in power in Punjab, so that's why this is not working, and the farmers in Punjab are burning crops. I'm quite certain that's the tone and tenor it's going to take. But let's see where it goes. And I think there's a couple of other small things to note. One is things like the Eighth Pay Commission. Delhi has a lot of people who are part of the central government or basically, employed by the government. There's been talk of changes there. I think that rallied the troops a bit. If you looked at the socio-economic structure of Delhi, there were a lot of seats which are considered Purvanchali seats. That's where the BJP has won quite big. It is generally sort of a Hindu upper caste domain, especially for the more posh parts of Delhi. They're generally business and entrepreneurial, and they have traditionally always supported the BJP. And I was also looking at an interesting graph in terms of what the MLA pie looks like right now. there are much fewer young MLAs, which is something that AAP had. It had a lot of young blood and young people coming in. That's gone down from 23% to 13%. The chunk that has really grown is sort of 50 to 70. Even the 70 plus has grown. It's not a huge amount, but it has. So I think it's changed a bit. And one final word on the Congress, which is that, she made a lot of problematic statements. But honestly, if you were to drill it down to who made the biggest changes on the urban landscape of Delhi, it's Sheila Dikshit. It is so sad that that entire legacy just got completely wiped out. Here is a chief minister who introduced CNG. Here is the chief minister who introduced metros. Um Here is a chief minister who really changed the way, a lot of what Delhi looks like. And another sort of final word on this issue of women's safety. Let's wait and watch. I know there was I remember reading something in around December last year on how these anti-Romeo squads, which have been deployed in Uttar Pradesh, will also be deployed in Delhi. I think that can become quite dangerous, because it does slip into vigilantism quite quickly. And I think honestly, there is a problem in North India around women's safety, and I don't know whether this is a larger social construct that needs to be addressed. If this government can do something about it, that's absolutely fantastic. But I think the proof will be in the eating of the pudding this time round for the BJP. Manu, you wanna
There,
come in?
there is,
Yeah.
yeah. I think there's quite a lot that you have both, I think, taken us forward in terms of directions. One part that I want to focus on is how Delhi has been so personality focused, right? Until at least now, as you rightly said. So we've had 10 years of Kejriwal, even when he was not chief minister. He was the personality that towered over everyone else in his party and in the state of Delhi. And 15 years before that, you had Sheila Dikshit. Thanks for bringing that up, because I think it's important that we also contextualize the Sheila Dikshit years, which I agree, I think brought Delhi's attention back on renewables like CNG, and really made metro what it is today, like probably the best metro underground connectivity in any city in India. But also, Mitali, the Sheila Dikshit years, if you see, were from 98 or 99 till 2013, which almost overlapped the UPA years. No, I mean, 4 years, 5 years of NDA. But then, so what I'm trying to say is, actually, Sheila Dikshit benefited majorly from her proximity with the Congress first family, but also having a very, very understanding and a very, very cooperative government in the union, right? So I think that really helped her put in place these policies. Now, that I think that's the tragedy of our present day system, right? We cannot. I mean, we have opted for a federal system of governance. We have opted for states which have, which are allowed to think otherwise or differently to what the union government may be. I read an interesting line recently, which said, even within a political spectrum, somebody said that they're libertarian when it comes to federal politics, so meaning they don't want to pay tax that the union government raises, but they would be more conservative when it comes to the state level, and municipality level they would be more socialist, and at the family level they would be communist, right? Meaning, what I'm trying to say is, like, people can and should be able to choose differently. And I think the sadness or the tragedy of the last, say, at least decade or so, is that it seems like, and I think it's fair in politics. Anything is fair, and I think BJP has every right to push for its own form of government, its own government, its own politics, across all forums. But it's sad that states that are not voting for BJP are being penalized, and this has become now part of political election campaign rhetoric, that you should vote for this government because then there will be a double engine sarkar, meaning to say that yes, the reason we did not actually release funds on time, the reason that we actually put spokes in every wheel of governance that this your state government had tried to do in the last 5 years is because we just didn't like them, or we didn't we aren't part of the same greater political family. And I think that's a sad part. But going back to, I think, it's been so personality driven, and I think again, uh, Sheila Dikshit had this like larger than life personality, right? I mean, towards the end of her second term or start of her third term, if you remember, there was the Commonwealth Games issue, scam, and all of that. But still, she was largely unscathed by all of that. And I think Kejriwal, perhaps, should have followed that model, but it seemed like, they were able to get him on something. Whether these charges stick is different, but did this sort of perception of Kejriwal as having, been corrupt stick? I would venture to say, yeah, probably yes. I think some of this did stick. I agree with you, Mitali, on women's safety and all. I mean, it's. I mean, we cannot just go by one incident or two incidents, and of course, Ruchir, we can't just go by anecdotal evidence, right? Because this is what people always say, and it's often, it depends on who are the people you're talking to, who are they who are sending their women out. Because by and large, we should look for and ask for empirical evidence, data. How many women are actually working? How many women are doing, evening shifts, night shifts? How many of them are able to walk back or take a public transport back home, so on and so forth, right? But having said all of that, my one sort of disagreement on what Richard you said was Congress having played spoil sport, right? And I think that's a very conventional view that if you see the New Delhi constituency alone, the BJP candidate, I think Parvesh Sahib Singh, he had defeated Arvind Kejriwal by 4,000 votes, whereas Sandeep Dikshit, who came third, got 4,500 votes. So it's very simplistic or reductive to say that, oh, if only Kejriwal and Congress had fought together, they would have, he would have scraped through. It doesn't work that way, and especially when there is disenchantment that builds against a sitting government, typically having multiple oppositions, according to me, would help the government. This I've seen from three elections in Tamil Nadu, 2011, 16, and 21, where opposition has been split. You have that sort of, anti-incumbency also sort of diffuses across the multiple alliances of parties, right? The worst thing that can happen is if you have all the entirety of the opposition that can come together. And I don't think Kejriwal was not alert, or the Aam Aadmi Party think tank were not alert to what what your theory is, Richard. Because if you remember, in 2024 May, Aam Aadmi Party contested four and Congress contested three out of the seven, right? So, I mean, to put it very simplistically, they could have just gone with a 40-30 arrangement or a 50-20 arrangement. But I think the Aam Aadmi Party knew this, though they lost heavily in the Lok Sabha elections in Delhi. I think they knew that combining with Congress would not actually help them. In fact, I think contesting alone probably was what made sense to them, and I think that's why they also fought. And I don't agree that Congress in this particular context played a spoil sport. Of course, it did not help that Congress also piled on the allegations and the anti-incumbency against a sitting chief minister. But then Congress did not even win a single seat, right? I mean, that tells you where they are in terms of priorities for the people of Delhi. So I think that's something we should keep in mind. I think let's move to this part about what this means for perhaps Delhi firstly, secondly the other states that are going to face election like pretty soon, Bihar, and then take Kerala, Tamil Nadu, which are all governed by non-BJP states, though Bihar they are in alliance, and then also what this means for India, the country at large. So, who wants to take this? Ruchir, Mitali?
I just have one question for Ruchir before we kind of move to the national implication, which is that, not just Delhi, but sort of NCR has been seen as this space to be in, whether it's Gurgaon or Noida. There's a lot of industry that exists over there. There's a lot of corporate headquarters that exists over there. And even then, it's still not sort of seen as the entrepreneurial hub, which seems counterintuitive. You know, when you sit so close to those in positions of power, sit so close to policy making, what's your experience been in terms of trying to build something as an entrepreneur in Delhi versus what it felt like in a Bangalore or increasingly in Chennai, actually, where as well, I think the state government is, sort of trying to woo investment very hard. Did you sense a difference? Or even Bombay, sorry, remiss of me not to mention Bombay.
I mean, I think we have an office in Noida, and I've done business in Delhi. I think the simplistic view is Delhi is full of two types of businesses. One is sort of old money, large businesses that have been around for generations, and then the second is sort of these multinationals who come and set up large hubs, mainly because of the population in Delhi. I mean, we have an office in Noida for the similar reason, which is that it's easier to recruit a certain amount of talent because you can't move everyone to Pune or Chennai, where our other offices are. I think, but the big issue that has become more a forefront of our conversations about Delhi than it ever was is the pollution piece, and I think there is a conscious decision now just for a better quality of life for either potential employees to move out or just the businesses to be set up elsewhere. I find in terms of where businesses do get set up, often it is about where the talent and the money is. And so, for example, if you set up a technology business, Bangalore, like when I did that for Langur, 8 out of 10 resumes were coming from Bangalore. So it made it easy for us to set up an office in Bangalore. Two or three things I just want to go back to. One was this point around MP, like older MPs. I also wonder how much it had to do with the amount of leadership churn within Aam Aadmi Party and how the because you had all these older leaders leaving, so many of them left after clashes with him over a period of time, that it became a younger party naturally. Second thing was around the corruption thing stuck because they came out of the anti-corruption agenda. I mean, like when they first had this giant mandate, we were all excited about a grassroots movement becoming a political movement, and so there was so much hope attached to what this government could do, and we didn't expect it to become the Arvind Kejriwal show. We hoped that this would be continue to be a democratic sort of movement. On what this means for the country, I think I continue to say the same thing that I've said before, which like we don't have a viable national opposition to the BJP. And I think the reason why that matters is if we don't have a like the benefit of a national party is multifold. One, obviously, campaign organizing and campaign financing. Second is sort of having a track record in multiple places. Third is sort of being able to organize in terms of people across the board. And like there are all these other benefits around media coverage, etc., that come with it. The thing is, because Congress is not there, and like we saw in the last election too, I mean, we effectively saw all these pockets of alliances that did something but not a lot. This challenge will continue to be unless in the next union election we can really have a solid front. Despite anti-incumbency issues with the BJP, we may still see them come to power. So for me, the thing that I strongly believe is we need a viable, coordinated, high quality national party to oppose the BJP if there is any chance that BJP loses the next election.
I actually have a, I mean, I have a, it's not completely different, but I see this as two different things, Manu, which is one is being One is being sort of prime politically, right? They've had a rush of wins, the BJP, as you outlined, early in this conversation, whether it's Maharashtra, now Delhi. So a lot of big wins are in their pocket. But increasingly, I feel like there is a separation between winning elections and running a government. And running a government which is successful for its people and delivering what it is that is seen as India's innate value. I'm just sort of jumping off from the union budget very quickly because for me, honestly, it was a non event. The spending was cut down on the infrastructure side. Spending was cut down on the social welfare side. So health spending came down, education spending came down in many pockets. NG Narega, which was a backbone for rural, India, their spending has been stagnant. I'm just trying to understand. It's great that, you have this massive political muscle. And honestly, if you look at, all the global news platforms, everyone's talking about this Delhi win. But what are you doing with it? That's my question. There's still a very, very acute jobs crisis. Let's face it. That internship scheme that was announced in the last budget, we have no idea where it's gone, because what we are hearing from corporates is that 5,000 rupees per month is nowhere near what is required to get talented young people in, right? It's also presuming that they have a certain level of skill which they don't have, which means that when they come out post education, they don't have that. Healthcare facilities are, I know there have been a lot of schemes, but largely it doesn't look like that spend is moving. What's happened with the GDP? It's really fallen off a cliff. That is the reality of the situation. And then you also have this situation where the geopolitics has turned. You're dealing with a maverick leader like Trump, who may one day say 25% tariffs and then say, okay, fine, no tariffs. I think, being in power politically is great. And that's a mandate that they've got fair and square. That's fine. I want to know in the last 10 years, what is the ground we have covered as a country? And are we at a position where we are frittering away, that innate value, even as one political party remains strong? So that for me is sort of the national question that I'm thinking about. And it's honestly, it's no one's case, whatever our politics may be, it's no one's case that you want to see your country underperform. Nobody wants to see that. You want to see your country do well. So I think that's how I see this nationally. What about you, Manu? What do you
Well,
see as sort of?
yeah, my sort of very simplistic or very pragmatic view or cynical view in one sense is the Delhi election doesn't really change, or it doesn't tip the apple cart very much, because it's Delhi is always a very small contributor to the overall parliamentary pool. There's seven Lok Sabha seats, and they're sort of um, heft in terms of determining or shaping national policy issues is very little. Of course, Delhi does get undue or disproportionate coverage because it is the national capital. But beyond that, what Delhi actually, the results mean for the country, I don't think is much. What it means for the Aam Aadmi Party, as you rightly said earlier, Mitali, it should lead them to do some soul searching. While only recently they won Punjab and expanded to new territories, they've not been able to sort of win Lok Sabha, and they've now lost their own state, right? So this now means they've sort of faced two defeats, and one more means there'll be real serious questions about their leadership and so on. So it's a moment for them to sort of regroup and understand and plan their own future. Um, One thing it means for other states, and again, I come back to the states of West Bengal, Tamil Nadu, and Kerala, which are facing elections in about 1 year's time from now, is I think there's a particular political campaign model which has um, reaped rich dividends now, which I think the BJP will now be emboldened to replicate across the country. Right, this is a lieutenant governor led sort of campaign, which is to make sure that you have these governments in those states which are not BJP governments. So you make the governor slash lieutenant governor start, attacking them, making it difficult for them in many ways. We've already seen this. This is not should not come as a as a surprise to any of these three states or the political leadership there. But I think what has happened is they've gone to the extent of being able to even undermine a Supreme Court judgment in favor of in favor of the elected government in Delhi over the lieutenant governor by amending the law in parliament and so on. So, meaning the fact that again, and the Supreme Court is partly sort of to be blamed for this because there was a judgment which ruled in favor of the Aam Aadmi Party government, so to speak, at that point. Yet, the law was then subsequently amended to give the lieutenant governor that, extra power, right? Which I think immediately should have faced some level of pushback from the courts, which it did not. But this is again, like I said, given them the 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 strength and the sort of motivation to continue doing this, I would say, repeatedly. And I think this is something we can expect across the other states as well. Again, like I said, from a national political perspective, maybe for the India alliance, they should think about, are they coordinating well enough? I think the Jammu Kashmir Chief Minister Omar Abdullah has already come out, swinging against this particular mismanagement of alliance between Congress and the Aam Aadmi Party and so on. But it's something that they must think how well are they synchronizing their strategy? How are they planning, to face elections in future? Like I said, unless they all sort of now band together in some shape or form, they can't take on the BJP. And as Ruchir says, they can't be a viable national political alternative. So I think I probably feel that's where we are heading now. Now all these parties must probably come together and see what they can do now in terms of challenging the BJP again. And this is a win for BJP in more ways than one, right? Just over 7 months ago in June, I think most of us felt that BJP was on the back foot electorally. But to now, to sort of put the onus back on the other side, I think shows that they're extremely good at electioneering, and the sooner there is, as Richard says, a viable national alternative, the better for the country also, right? Because what is the alternative policy to the BJP needs to be clearly laid out. Having said that, my last word is I've not followed the Delhi elections as closely as I would like to. And I would love to know if either of you can tell me what is the BJP sort of alternative policy or political platform to what the Aam Aadmi Party has done for Delhi. Like, do they have any major proposal that would take Delhi in a different direction?
I was smiling because I saw a policy that was similar to yours, Manu, in Tamil Nadu, 2,500 rupees a month for women from economically weaker backgrounds. There was also 21,000 rupees for pregnant women. There, like a lot of the stuff was very similar developmentally to what we've seen in other states. And that, like, this is why India is not. I find Indian politics is not as different in terms of social issues. I find that there is a fair bit of sort of convergence around social issues when it comes to BJP or opposition. So a lot of like same thing around education, travel reimbursement. Um, I like every time I read the policy, I felt like, oh, this could have come from Congress or Aam Aadmi Party. So I didn't feel like there was a lot of differences. One question I do have, and I feel like we're running out of time, is do you think we ever have a we will ever again have a grassroots led political movement that has a chance? Um, I've been thinking about that question given the vibe. Like, I mean, I feel like Aam Aadmi Party is going to not have a long future, especially if Arvind Kejriwal eventually gets convicted. So do you feel that there are other movements that can come up?
I mean, I can say very quickly, like, I think we're three optimists, which is why we do this podcast and we have this conversation. So never say never, right? There have been sort of sparks of that movement that we've seen even in the last few years. but they haven't sort of fructified into a large scale national movement. Look, I really think it's quite difficult to put a line under it, and we shouldn't do that. I mean, who would have thought we had this kind of a second Trump presidency, right? If we were talking in the early Joe Biden years, we would say no, done, finished. But here we are, and we have his sort of second lieutenant, Elon Musk, who's making decisions about how an entire country should run and how the world should be impacted by it. So the honest answer is I don't think we should knock it. I think at this point for the Aam Aadmi Party, honestly, it should not come as a surprise, because I think the last couple of years looked like a very, very different Aam Aadmi Party. And to be honest, there was hubris that was settling in. It is also true that anti-incumbency can be a powerful move when it does happen, and I think all parties should bear that in mind, not just the Aam Aadmi Party, because there is a limit to people's patience, and then they vote with their feet. Manu, what do you think?
Well, it's an interesting time for the Aam Aadmi Party. I mean, it does sound awful lot like we're all trying to give advice to them, and I'm sure they've thought through all of this much more than us, considering how much skin in the game they have. But you know, being in opposition, I think, is a very useful a part of political growth. And I think Aam Aadmi Party, since their first election, they've always been in power, and they've done really well, and they've been extremely popular, a populist form of governance, or populist sort of form of politics. I think they now need to sit down and reflect, regroup, and perhaps even, uh, come up with a new direction in what they want to do. They may need to install greater democracy within their own party mechanism. How do they take decisions? How do they build the next line of leadership? How do they expand? To be a truly grassroots party. I don't think, Ruchir, I may sound a bit arrogant, but I don't think Aam Aadmi Party is a truly grassroots movement. Like it was one or two flash movements that created, and by and large, they found support. There was resonance. There was yearning for a different kind of a party or a different kind of leadership. People who are educated, who've come through professional backgrounds, government or private, or civil society. And I think that resonated, and they were sort of swept in at that point of time. A true grassroots movement would be something, people work over years, right? 10, 15, 20 years, slog it out. The best part of for the Aam Aadmi Party in all of this is, I think, they have tasted success. They have also tasted the harsh side of politics, arrests, and personality clashes, and wild accusations and mudslinging and all of that. And still, they're not that old. They Arvind Kejriwal, Sisodia, Atishi, all Raghav Chadda, they're all still young in terms of Indian politics. And 5 years is a long time. Now BJP in the state has to perform. BJP has to now cannot hide behind anything. They cannot blame anyone else or any other party. Of course, they can still blame our first prime minister or someone 50 years before this. But to be serious, they cannot actually now take everything for granted. So how Aam Aadmi Party performs as an opposition party will really tell us what the Aam Aadmi Party is made of. Whether they have the patience to wait those 5 years, you know, not just like go away and come back, 4.5 years later, said, let's campaign now, but actually continue to raise issues for the people day in and day out. And none of the issues we've talked about today or over the last 3 months, that Delhi faces or the people of Delhi face, will they will not all be solved in 5 years from now. So Aam Aadmi Party will have a lot to campaign for, lot of issues to sort of really hit back at the BJP. Of course, the first 6-9 months will be sort of what we call honeymoon months, easy, seamless, fun. Everybody's happy, and there's a lot of ribbon cutting and kissing babies and all of that. But after that, when, as they say, the sort of the rubber hits the road, it will be tough for BJP, especially when the BJP leaders who form the cabinet in Delhi will all be young people, will all be first timers, right, with very little experience in governance. So how they manage it will be interesting to see. So I'm looking forward to the Aam Aadmi Party being a good opposition for 5 years.
We shall see. Shall we move to Have You Heard? Who wants to go first?
I don't have one, so go on, Mitali.
I have a quick one, which sort of I was reading some things anecdotally, and then I found that there were more articles about it. So apparently, over the last couple of years, the one thing that's happened globally, especially in parts of Europe and Australia, is the shutting down of nightclubs. It's just not a thing anymore, particularly post COVID. For the younger generation, apparently, nightclubs, that particular kind of gathering, that time zone is has been a non-starter. And increasingly, what's become very popular with the newer generations is parties that are timed between 5 to 10 p.m., which I thought was only a me thing because I'm very old, but apparently it's a young thing as well. So it was interesting to read about how people are changing the way they gather. I know when we were young, like nightclubs were like, oh my God, if only I can go and attend one of those nights with my friends. But it's all changed. And I think what's come along with it is these giant music festivals. That's become a huge thing, daytime events, electronic music festivals. So I was quite intrigued to read that because I thought it used to be that the older you get, the more fuddy-duddy you get, and you can't do anything beyond 10 p.m. But now apparently the younger generation also doesn't want to do anything beyond 10 p.m.
I
Richie,
actually
what
read
about you? Yeah,
that the consumption of alcohol among young people has reduced as well, like by 5 or 10
yeah, yeah,
percent at
yeah,
least across the
yeah,
world.
yeah.
Um,
Unfortunately, vaping has increased, but you're
yeah,
right, alcohol consumption has fallen.
in some ways we get better. Um, Mine was
What's yours?
interesting around humpback whales. So we might, like everyone might know that research shows humpback whales can communicate with each other. Now scientists are saying that they may communicate like human beings in sentences. So so they study whales over time and they notice like an incredible level of complexity with hierarchical structures. And what they noticed was like young humpback whales start off with a certain structure and then it evolves and becomes more and more complex as they age. And there's sentences as well as sort of sounds that go like with frequency. So these songs they show the cultural evolution as well as passing of time as they grow. Anyway, we still can't understand them as well, but we're learning about the patterns, which I thought was very interesting. I mean, so much we don't know about our own world. Forget like space. That was mine. Manu, do you have one?
Nope, nope, not this time. I've not
All right.
read or heard anything, so we can wrap up with you.
Thank you for joining us. As always, we love your feedback. If you can email us, we welcome it at indiadialoguepodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on X, TID_podcast. Mitali is at Mitali Live. Manu is at Manuraj1983. I am at Ruchir_P. You can also find us on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple. And in case you made it this far and you value us, please leave a rating. It really helps other people find the podcast. Thank you again for listening. And until next time, we're really grateful you listen to us. Bye.